Hello everyone, it's Miss Hinde-Taylor here just about to read chapter 20 of Half a King by Joe Abercrombie, and the title of this chapter is Freedom. Samael led the way at a furious pace, and they all walked her course with as little question as they had rode it. Through a broken land of black rock and white snow they floundered, where stunted trees had all been swept into tortured shapes by the wind, bowing mournfully towards the sea. "How many steps to Vansterland?" called Rolf. Samael checked her instruments, lips moving with silent sums, peered up at the smudge of mother sun in the iron sky, and headed on without answering. Few in the citadel of Thorby would have reckoned it a treasure, but nothing's roll of mildewed sailcloth became their most valued possession. With the care of pirates dividing a stolen hoard, they tore it up between them and wound it under their clothes, around their frozen heads and hands, stuffed their boots with it. Half Jow carried with him so they could huddle beneath it when night came. No doubt it would scarcely be warmer than the utter darkness outside, but they knew they would be grateful for that little. That little would be the difference between life and death. They took turns breaking new ground, Jow forging ahead without complaint, Rolf venting curses on the snow as though an old enemy, Ankran struggling on with arms hugged around himself. Nothing with head up and sword clutched tight, as though he fancied he was made from steel himself, and no weather could chill or warm him, even when in spite of Yarvi's prayers snow began to settle across the shoulders of his stolen jacket. "Bloody wonderful," muttered Rolf at the sky. "It works for us," said Ankran. "Covers our tracks, keeps us hidden. With luck our old mistress will think we froze out here." "Without luck we will," muttered Yarvi. "No one cares either way," said Rolf. "No one's mad enough to follow us here." "Ha!" Barked nothing. Stixerim is too mad to do anything else. And he tossed the end of his heavy chain over his shoulder like a scarf and cut that conversation down as dead as he had the south wind's guards. Yarvi frowned back the way they had come, their tracks snaking off into the grey distance. He wondered when Stixerim would find the wreck of her ship. Then he wondered what she would do when she did. Then he swallowed and floundered after the others just as fast as he could. At midday, mother sun no higher than Jowd's shoulder at a feeble zenith, their long shadows struggling after them across the white, they paused to huddle in a hollow. "Food," said Samael, giving voice to every thought among them. No one was keen to volunteer. They all knew food was worth more than gold out here. It was Ankran who surprised them all by first reaching into his furs and bringing out a packet of salted fish. He shrugged. "I hate fish." "The man who used to starve us now feeds us," said Rolf. "Who says there's no justice?" He came up with a few biscuits well past their best, if they'd ever had one. Samael followed with 2 dried loaves. Yarvi could only spread his empty palms and try to smile. "I'm humbled by your generosity." Ankran rubbed gently at his crooked nose. "It warms me just a little to see you humbled." "How about you two?" Jowd shrugged. "I had little time to prepare." Nothing held up his sword. "I brought the knife." They all considered their meagre larder scarcely enough for one decent meal for the 6 of them. "I suppose I'd better be mother," said Samael. Yarvi sat, slavering like his father's dogs waiting for scraps, while she rationed out 6 fearsomely equal and awfully tiny shares of bread. Rolf swallowed his in 2 bites, then watched as Ankran chewed every crumb 100 times, with eyes closed in ecstasy. "Is that all we eat?" Samael wrapped up the precious bundle again, jaw tight, and pushed it into her shirt without speaking. "I missed Trig," said Rolf mournfully. Samael would have made a fine minister. She'd been thinking clearly enough on her way off the ship to grab 2 of Stixerim's abandoned wine bottles, and now they packed them with snow and took turns to carry them inside their clothes. Yarvi soon learned only to sip the results, since unwrapping to piss in that cold was an act of heroism that earned grunted congratulations from the others, all the more heartfelt since everyone knew sooner or later they would have to present their own leathers to the searing wind. For all it felt like a month of torture, the day was short, and as evening came the heavens blazed with stars, glittering swirls and burning trails, bright as the eyes of the gods. Samael pointed out strange constellations. For every one of it she had a name: the Bold Weaver, the Crooked Way, Stranger Come Knocking, the Eater of Dreams. And as she spoke them, steaming into the dark, she smiled, a happiness in her voice that he had never heard from her before, and made him smile too. "How many steps to Vansterland now?" he asked. "Some." She looked back to the horizon, happiness swiftly snuffed out, and up the pace. He toiled on after her. "I haven't thanked you." "You can do it when we don't end up a pair of frozen corpses." Since I might not get that chance, thank you. You could have let Trig kill me. If I'd taken a moment to think about it, I would have. He could hardly complain at that. He wondered what he would have done if she had been the one Trig throttled and did not like the answer. I'm glad you didn't think then. There was a long pause, with just the crunching of their boots in the snow. Then he saw her frown over her shoulder at him and away. So am I. The second day they joked to keep their spirits up. You're being stingy with the stores again, Ankaran. Pass back the roast pig. And they laughed. I'll race you to Fool's Card. Last one through the gate gets sold to pay for ale. And they chuckled. I hope Stixerin brings some wine when she comes for us. Not so much as a smile. When they slithered from their wretched tent at dawn on the third day, if you could call that watery gloom a dawn, they were all grumbling. I do not care for this old blunder in front, croaked Nothing, after tripping over Rolf's heels for a third time. And I'm not sure I like this madman's sword at my back, snapped Rolf over his shoulder. You could have it through your back instead. How many years between you and still you act like children? Yarvi pushed his way in to step between them. We need to help each other, or the winter will kill us all. Faintly, just ahead, he heard Samael say, More than likely, it will kill us all anyway. He did not disagree. By the fourth day, the freezing fog lying over the white land like a shroud, they were silent. Just a grunt now as one or another stumbled. Just a grunt as one or another helped them up and on to nowhere. 6 silent figures in the great emptiness, in the great cold void, each struggling under their own burden of chill misery, under their own chafing thrall collar and even heavier chain, each with their own pain and hunger and fear. At first Yarvi thought about the men drowned on the ship. How many dead? The planks cracking and the sea pouring in, so that he could save himself. The slaves straining at their chains for one more gasp before Mother Sea dragged them down, down, down. But his mother had always said, never worry about what has been done, only about what will be. There was no change in it, and guilt over the past and worry about the future began both to fade, leaving only taunting memories of food. The 4 dozen pigs roasted for the visit of the High King, so much for such a little grey-haired man and his hard-eyed minister. The feast when Yarvi's brother passed his warrior's test that Yarvi had done no more than pick at, knowing he could never pass himself. The beach before his ill-fated raid, men cooking the meal that might have been the last, meat turning above 100 fires, heat like a hand on your face, a ring of hungry grins, lit by the flame, fat sizzling and the crackling blackened. Freedom! Roared Rolf, opening his arms wide to hold the vast expense of empty white. Freedom to freeze where you please, freedom to starve where you like, freedom to walk till you drop. His voice died quickly in that thin, sharp air. Finished? Asked Nothing. Rolf let his arm flop down. Yes. And they slogged on. It was not the thought of his mother that kept Yarvi going, step after floundering step, stride after aching stride, fall after chilling fall, dogged in the tracks of the others. It was not the thought of his betrothed, or his dead father, or even his stall beside Mother Gundring's fire. It was the thought of Odin, smiling with his hand on Yarvi's shoulder, of Odin promising to be his shoulder man, of Odin asking gently as the spring rain if a cripple should be king of Getland. I think not, Yarvi snarled in smoke through his cracked lips. I think not. I think not. And step after tortuous step, Getland edged ever closer. The 5th day was clear and icy crisp, the sky blinding blue, so that it seemed Yarvi could see almost all the way to the sea, a strip of black and white on the far horizon of a land of black and white. We've done well, he said, you have to admit. Samael, shading her eyes from the brightness as she frowned westward, had to do no such thing. We've had good weather luck. Oh, I don't feel lucky, muttered Rolf, hugging himself. Do you feel lucky, Jowd? I feel cold, said Jowd, rubbing at the pink tips of his ears. Samael shook her head at the sky, which aside from a distant bruise far off to the north, looked unusually clear. Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. You'll learn what bad weather looks like. There's a storm coming. Rolf squinted up. You're sure? I don't tell you how to snore, do I? Don't tell me how to navigate. Rolf looked at Yarvi and shrugged. But before dark, as usual, she was proved right. That bruise on the sky grew and swelled and darkened and turned odd colours. The gods are angry, muttered Nothing, frowning up. When aren't they? Asked Yarvi. The snow began to fall in giant flakes, in curtains and eddies. The wind blew up in shrieking gusts, bludgeoning from every way at once, barging them left and right. Yarvi took a fall and, when he clambered up, couldn't see any of the others. He blundered on in a panic and ran straight into Gerald's back. "We have to get out of this," he screeched, hardly able even to hear his own voice over the wind. "I will not argue," Gerald bellowed back. "We need deep snow." "Or snow we have," roared Ankram. They floundered to the bottom of a narrow gully, the most promising slope Yarvi could hope to find with the snow coming in such flurries that the others were little more than ghosts. He dug like a rabbit, scooping snow between his legs, burrowing desperately inwards. Then when he tunnelled a body's length up, his hands burned with the cold inside their wrappings of wet sailcloth. His muscles burned with the effort, but he forced himself on. He dug as if his life depended on it. It did. Samel wormed her way after him, growling through her gritted teeth and using a hatchet like a trowel. They dug out first a shelf, then a hollow, then a tiny chamber. Ankron wriggled in behind, tongue wedged into the gap in his front teeth as he scooped the snow back. Rolf came next in the cold dimness, then Jowd worked his great shoulders up into the growing cave, and finally nothing poked his head in. "Neat," he said. "Keep the entrance clear," Yarvi muttered, "or we'll be buried in the night." And he hunched against the packed snow, and wound the soaked wrappings and blew into his cupped hands. He had few enough fingers already. He could afford to lose no more. "Where did you learn this?" asked the male, sitting back beside him. "My father taught me. I think he has saved our lives." "You must thank him when you see him." Ankron wriggled his shoulders into place. They were tightly squeezed, but they had been for days. There was no room for pride or distaste or enmity out here in the wastes. Yarvi closed his eyes then and thought of his father, laid out pale and cold on the slab. "Father's dead." "I am sorry," came Jowd's deep voice. "It's good that one of us is." Yarvi let his hand drop and realised a moment later it had fallen against the male's. Her upturned fingers pressed into his palm. It felt good there, warm where her skin touched his. He did not move it, and nor did she. Slowly he closed his fingers around hers. There was a long silence then, the wind whining soft outside their shelter, and the breath coming heavy inside, and Yarvi began to feel about as close to comfortable, packed under strides of frozen snow, as he had since they left Ankran's fire. Here, he felt the breath of the word on his face, felt Samel gently take him by the wrist. His eyes flicked open, but he could not guess at her expression in the darkness. She turned his hand over and pressed something into his palm, stale and sour and halfway between soggy and frozen, but it was bread, and by the gods he was glad to get it. They sat pressed together, all eking out their shares, all chewing with something like contentment, or at least relief, and one by one swallowing and falling silent, and leaving Yarvi wondering whether he dared take Samel's hand again. Then she said, "That's the last food." Another silence, but this one far less comfortable. Rolf's voice came muffled in the darkness. "How far to Vansterland?" And no one answered. That's the end of chapter 20, guys. Join me next time for chapter 21, The Better Men. Take care.